Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is allow. Let's look at a few definitions. The first way you might hear the word allow used is to mean to give someone permission to do something. That's probably the most common way that you'll hear this word used. The second way you might hear the word allow used is to give the necessary time or opportunity for something. A final way you might hear the word allow used is to admit the truth of something. Okay? Allow is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, we're going to add ing to the end of the word. Now, some of my former students might be remembering that I have previously said when a verb ends in consonant, vowel, consonant, we need to double the last consonant. But here, O and W together are only making a vowel sound. The letter W is not making a consonant sound, so we're not doubling the W. So the progressive form is allowing. To make the past tense and participle forms of this verb, all we need to do is add ed. Because this verb ends in a voiced vowel sound, ow, the ed is just going to make a d sound. Allowed, allowed. Let's look at some phrasal verbs next. The first phrasal verb we're going to talk about has two very different meanings. Allow for. The first meaning is to take something into consideration. This might be when you're doing a calculation or you're making some type of plan. So here it is in a sentence. We should allow for delays when planning our trip. A second meaning for allow for is to provide a time or place for something. Here it is in a sentence. Please allow for an hour of training. Okay? So when you hear the second meaning for allow for, the person who maybe is making the request is telling you an expectation of how long something might take or where something might take place. Another phrasal verb with allow is allow in, and that means to permit someone or something to enter a place. Here it is in a sentence. I don't allow pets in the kitchen. And then we have sort of the opposite of allow in, allow out. And that is to permit someone to leave a room or a building, or maybe to go outside. Here it is in a sentence. He's not allowed out of his room until he finishes his homework. Today, for some extra sample sentences with allow, we're going to practice using active voice in the simple present and then passive voice in the simple present. If you watch yesterday's video ad, I provide a longer description about the differences between active voice and passive voice. And I'll repeat those as we talk about some of these sample sentences. So if you'll remember, using the simple present verb tense is really common when we're talking about habits, routines, or facts. So let's look at an affirmative sentence in the simple present. The principal allows children to be in the school before it starts. So here, our subject is one person, the principal. Could be a man, could be a woman. We don't know. Doesn't matter. We're adding an S to the end of the verb because when our subject is he, she, or it in the simple present, we need that S on the end of the verb. Okay. In the second sentence, to make passive voice, what we're going to do is use a form of be. So in the present tense, our be forms are is, am, and are. And then we're going to use the participle form of our verb. Okay? That's how we're going to make simple present in the passive voice. And you may remember that I have previously said we might see passive voice being used when we don't know the person who's doing the action, or maybe it doesn't matter who's doing the action. Another way you might recognize passive voice is from signs that communicate different pieces of information. Here, sometimes the signs, it is implied that the local government or the state government is making the rule. They're the subject, and so they don't need to say that. Or maybe it's the owner of a particular building, and so these are the rules for that person's property. So, so to make simple present in passive voice, here's what we're going to do. We're going to move the object or the recipient of the action from the first sentence. So it was the children, allows children. Children is receiving the action. We're going to move that to the beginning of the sentence. Then we'll do our present form of be, our participle form, and then we'll finish the sentence. Children are allowed to be in the school before it starts. Okay? If we want to make negative in the simple present, we're going to use, in active voice, in active voice, we're going to use don't or doesn't, or you could use the non-contraction forms do not, does not, and our base verb. So let's look at a sample sentence of that. The owner of the building doesn't allow smoking on site. So on site here sort of means the property, the premises might be another way to see that. If we were to do this in passive tense, though, we're going to take away the subject, right, and just say smoking is not allowed on site. Okay. Finally, let's look at making a question in active voice and then in passive voice. In the simple present, to make a question, we're going a yes or no question. We're going to start with do or does, then our subject, then the base verb. Here is an example. Does the theater allow outside food and drinks? Okay. If instead we want our question just to be in passive voice, we don't maybe care who's making the rule here, we're going to start with be. Then we have our object or person or thing that receives the action, and then our participle form. Are outside food and drinks allowed? Okay. These questions and statements are communicating the same ideas. We just might use these different forms to put different emphasis on what's important or what we want our listeners or our readers to pay attention to. Finally, today, let's look at some words that are related to our verb allow. The first word is a noun, allowance. This word can have a few different meanings. One of the more common ways you might hear about it is to mean a small amount of money that a parent regularly gives a child. So for some families, they might give a small amount of money to children if they are helping out with certain chores around the house. It might give the child a little more investment in the activity. It might also teach them the importance of saving money. So here, that meaning is being used in the first example sentence. Her allowance is $2 per week. Okay. A second meaning for allowance is the amount of something that is permitted. And that second meaning is being used in the second example sentence. The checked bag allowance is 50 pounds. So this sentence comes from something I saw in reference to flying and the rules related to that. So you can check a bag, so you drop it off as you check into the airport, but the bag cannot be more than 50 pounds or you have an extra fee that you are required to pay. So that allowance is the amount that is permitted. Another word you might hear is an adjective, allowable, and it means permissible. It means that it's permitted under rules or laws. Here it is in a sentence. The maximum allowable capacity is 50 people. Okay. Finally, we're going to end today with another related verb. It's disallow. And it could mean to refuse to allow something. It could also mean that it's being rejected or it's being vetoed. Those could all be synonyms for this verb disallow. Here is an example. The store is disallowing anyone without a mask from entering. So that sentence comes out of a newspaper article I was reading earlier today. So a store is refusing to allow people to come into the store if they are not wearing a mask. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I appreciate your comments and your sample sentences, so keep practicing and I'll see you again the next day. Have a good one.